I'm Peter Darrow, the founder of Wise Millennial, which is a peer-to-peer knowledge sharing platform specifically for millennials to network and learn from each other, all young professionals. I'm here with Anthony Spark. Anthony, why don't you briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. Happy to be here, Peter. I'm a big fan of yours and young millennials, so it's an honor and a privilege to be here. I think I saw one of your first ads that you had running is I think how I ended up here originally, if I'm not mistaken. I don't recall, but I'm glad to be friends. But anyway, my name's Anthony. I live on Long Island, New York. I've been in the networking business space for going on 16 years. That's been my full-time gig. I've been financially independent from a traditional form of income since my mid-20s, 25 years old. Our companies do a few $1 million of revenue now. They're currently growing very quickly. They're growing multiple millions of dollars in revenue per year. We're really excited about it. We're really catching stride here. And we're super thankful to be, and I say this humbly because if it wasn't for a lot of opportunity in my life, it wasn't a lot of mentorship. But as far as I know, I think I'm the first people in my family lineage to have a 7-figure net worth. We achieved that at 31, and we're in a position where we can be full-time stay-at-home parents, do a lot of charity work, wrote a book, have a podcast, but we're really passionate about helping people, teaching financial literacy, and people being able to be financially independent so they can live their values and truly be able to do whatever charity work or enjoy their life with their family in the way that they choose.
Well, first off, we're so lucky to have you here and have you in our network, and I'm very appreciative of that. I was going to say you look about 26, Anthony.
Thank you. I'll be 34 at the end of this month. I got good genes.
I think you stopped
my beard
after 25.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, exactly. I mean, no stress. I haven't worked full time at a job since then, but I also can't grow a beard, so that might also be affecting.
That's fair. This is just, again, this is meant to be kind of conversational, interactive. I wanted just to, give you the floor for a few minutes and we kind of go into some questions. But Anthony, when it comes, there's so much when it comes to financial literacy, right? And managing money.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not going to be able to tackle it all today. But let's start broad, okay? Given that we're a young professional audience, what advice would you share in terms of managing money, in terms of basic principles or philosophy? Yeah. How should we think or frame money management?
Yeah. So what I've found is largely in all of our lives, we aren't driven by logic. We're driven by feelings. And finance is a very emotional thing. We use money to fulfill needs in our lives. And if we just looked at data, we very often wouldn't act in the way that we sometimes do. We come from different backgrounds, different lifestyles, different levels of success or poverty. And that largely will indicate your financial habits, your beliefs, and your paradigm around it. So a few key things that I think are vital. There's different types of lifestyles people want. Some people are super minimalistic and they're frugal. Some people want a Rolex and a Bentley and a mansion. And they're much more, they like to have luxury items. I don't believe either one is right or wrong. What I do think is important to keep in mind is when we buy luxury items before we have assets and we have our long-term financial independence built, we need to build things and put ourselves in a position where assets ultimately are going to buy our luxuries if we're ever going to have freedom. I think that all of us, if we met someone that lived at home with their parents at 35 years old, owned absolutely nothing, barely could pay their bills but drove a Lamborghini, we'd think that's probably out of order for priorities. Nothing wrong with the Lamborghini. It's just that there's so many other things that need to happen. If you can barely pay your rent or you're not paying any rent and you're in your 30s and you have no independence, it's not that there's anything wrong with these different things. I think the important thing to keep in mind is getting really clear on what our values are and understanding that we need to live below our means. Most people I talk to, they're just broke at various different levels. First, they're broke with a Toyota and they go, I'm in Long Island, so they go to like the Jersey Shore or Montauk for their vacation, and then they are living in a certain place on Long Island. Then they get raises. People here are typically professionals. You're going up a corporate ladder, or you're building a company or whatever it may be, but you're growing in income. You're the people that are doing things or investing in personal development. So then you get raises and you move up the ladder. But then what happens is typically you go from being, having no money left over, not investing large sums of money or saving money in a way where now you go from the Toyota to a Lexus. And now your trip is now to Miami and you're staying at the Fontainebleau. And then maybe you go from the Lexus to a Land Rover and now you're going to Europe. But if you're not understanding that money is a tool, if you're not living below your means, if you're not understanding some of these different accounts we need in our lives, it's understanding what a Roth IRA is, understanding the power of a 401k or a Roth 401k, understanding the fees being taken out of the 401ks that you might have for your company that's supplying it, understanding investing versus spending, building assets. These are absolutely vital concepts. And whether you have $200,000 of student loans and you've been in debt with credit cards, we got to be very careful to not confuse needs with wants. Because for me, and this may resonate with some of you and may not, but my time with my kids, I have 4-year-old twins. I have a third baby on the way. My wife no longer has to work. She's financially independent because of the business we've built. I haven't had to work a full-time job since I'm 25, like I said. For me, I think the baseline, if people are really honest with themselves, true success in your life is going to come from building a level of financial independence. And we need to use the vehicles in our lives to understand how money works, because money is a game. Most people that are listening to this have probably played Monopoly before. And we all know the way you win in Monopoly, and if you were here live, I would ask you, how do you win in Monopoly? So let me ask you, Peter, how do you win in the game of Monopoly?
How do you win the game of Monopoly? You bankrupt everybody else.
How do you bankrupt them?
By developing property.
Correct. By owning assets, by buying properties. So we have a very clear, very basic, fundamental, rudimentary level of financial understanding in the game of Monopoly, which is base capitalism, which people can like or dislike, but it's the game we're currently in. Right. So you either need to change games or play by the rules of the game you're in. So that's where we are. Who's going to win in Monopoly by going around the board and collecting $200 and never buying anything? Nobody. Right. You're just waiting to go bankrupt. But if you're currently living your life by getting a paycheck every week and spending all of that money on things that are not going to be income producing assets, not retiring, not saving, hey, Lily, then you're not going to be able to put yourself in a position, hey there, it's nice to meet you, I'm Anthony.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Lily, I didn't met you before. I'm sorry, I'm late.
I did. You did. I remember that. I remember that. No worries. No sweat. Glad you're here. But then we're putting ourselves in the same position. So what we need to understand is money's a tool. And if you take your money, and here's my recipe. This is the recipe I've used, the recipe I teach, and I think it's a really good foundational thing to do. You don't have to build a networking business. You don't have to build an e-commerce business. You don't have to do it in cryptocurrencies or stocks or real estate. Lots of ways to do things. But first, you need to have your first type of income is you need to have an active income. That's what almost everyone on this call is going to have. A way to make money this week to pay your bills. But then you also need to have a long-term play in the second category, building an asset that over the course of 2, 3, 5, 10 years can begin to produce enough income to overshadow, or at least at a base level, give you enough money to live. And then from there, you need to be able to then ultimately, you want to put enough money aside, because I think that for anyone, a base number is about $3 million. And depending on your needs, your wants, your family, could be up to 5 to 10 million. But over the course of a few decades, you want to put enough money aside that no matter what happens, that you can live off that money. Because for me, I'm not really a luxury guy. I like stuff. You give me a Bugatti, I'll drive it. You buy me a mansion, I'll live in it. My mama didn't raise no fool. I'm not going to give it back. But the most important thing for me was the time to appreciate and be present for the things in life that are most important, which are free. But was my time to not have to go out to earn income. I think a question people often ask is, do I like my job? And it's a good question, but I think there's a question that supersedes that question, which is, do you have to do something to make money? Because the question isn't whether you like it or not. The question is, can you choose to not do it? And I think when you go above that level of looking for financial independence and building that, it allows you to really live your values the way you truly want.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I relate to what you were saying before. It's kind of like the gambler's mentality of you start winning and then so you start betting more,
Yeah.
right? Versus like as opposed to just staying conservative. But as you start building more assets and building more wealth, then all of a sudden your lifestyle creeps up and
Yeah.
you're spending way more than you need to be or should be. What are some well do we you kind of touched on this before, is it a revenue problem? Do people have a spending problem? What are some ideas or ways that people can create kind of either multiple streams of revenue while not burning out of time?
Yeah. So I think first off, let's start with kind of the core of the question, which is I believe wealth is more about defense than offense. Mike Tyson's made about $500 million in his career. He's probably made more than most of the people listening to this call are going to make in their career. Now, I don't want to limit you. Maybe you make more, but let's just statistically say it's unlikely.
Right.
So if that's the case, and he almost went bankrupt, you can't out-earn the problem if you don't understand financial literacy. So the first part is reducing spending and living below your means. Because if you make $1 million and spend $1 million, you have a $0 net worth. If you make $50,000 but spend $30,000, you have $20,000 net worth. So when I find a lot of people, they do this YOLO mentality because you're working so hard, you got the student loan, and it's like you're trying to make do, and you're just like, I'm not willing to sacrifice going out to dinner with my friends this Friday.
Right.
I'm going to cut I'm going to cut my only sliver of happiness out of my life after I've done this. And being frugal and being financially savvy does not mean sitting on a lawn chair in your living room eating ramen noodles crying. That's not what it means. It's starting to get really clear of saying, how much am I making? How much are my bills? And what can I cut out or do without that won't affect my happiness and my lifestyle? And you start there. On the building more incomes, it's being really creative in finding ways. There's an article I can send you guys, and if you want to put on here about micro businesses, this idea of building a business, because you can have a side hustle, but it doesn't solve the ultimate problem, because ultimately, Peter, like you said, you're going to end up burnt out. You only have so much time, and our time is a much more valuable resource than money. If I were to pose a question, I'll pose this to Lily. I'll give you an option, Lily. I will give you $100 million right now, but you have to fast forward and you'd have to instantly be 99 years old. Would you take that offer?
I think Lily's muted, but she can.
Okay, so Peter, you give it to me then, Peter. What would you
type in the box? She can type in the chat.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Well, 99, definitely. I can't do anything.
Correct. So most people, 99.99% of people, everyone actually, in this particular case, in reality, no one's ever said to me, yes, I'd like to be like a few months away from death with a pile of money. Because we all intrinsically know that time is an irretrievable, more valuable asset in our life than money.
Right.
But that means that if you're trading time for money, then you're never able to truly be able to balance your life. So with the side hustle, with chasing in this hustle mentality of just working until you die, that's not what I don't stand for that. It's not really what my goal is. It's saying, how can I start to build something? Whether it be with small amounts of wealth. I don't care if it's on Robinhood or Roth IRA. I don't care if you starting to put money aside and you want to start going into some type of real estate thing as a long term, or you're going to I help people build online businesses. They're low cost, they're low risk. I don't care what it is, but you need to start to find ways and start to seek personal development and networking and connections, because there are so many ways that you can make money. You could go drive Instacart and you can make $800 to $1,000 a week just delivering groceries and networking and listening to audiobooks and learning. You could do nights doing Uber and Uber Eats. Now, that is a side gig. That's not going to ultimately get you where to go. But if you take all that money and you do it for a year or two, and you got $50,000 put aside, $30,000 put aside, you can start something. You can build something. And maybe you lose it. Maybe it doesn't work. That's going to happen.
Right.
But you'll never regret a shot you take that fails more than the wondering what if and the regret of not trying. ever.
And part of that's a mindset too. Some people sometimes, especially millennials, young professionals, they think that something is below them or beneath them, or that, like psychologically, I can't be an Uber driver. I have a college degree, and this is below me or something.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll give you a funny example. I just sat the meeting right before this with a couple that I admire tremendously. The girl in my organization I coach and mentor, and her parents, they're worth they have a substantial 8-figure net worth. Built a very substantial company, and they're pillars of their community. They're Christians. They're leaders in their church. They are very well known, and they're very well respected. They're very financially well off. They have a net worth that most people will never attain statistically. And they own a lot of properties. It's one of the things they do. He sold a business that he had. She currently works part-time as a CFO because they just like to be busy. They're performers, and they want to serve. They want to do things. He does all the maintenance work on all his properties. He does all the stuff. And he will very often have the people renting his properties speak down on him because they think he's a maintenance man. And he had very clearly said to me, he said, I don't pay. Sorry about your audio there. Hopefully you can cut that. I can learn about who they are and their character. And he goes, it gives me a position to learn something. He said, there's nothing beneath me. Because people that are going to be truly successful, first off, leaders, they serve people. And they understand they're giving up their rights to be able to have a lot of responsibilities. And there's nothing beneath. I drove Instacart earlier this year. I make a very substantial 6-figure income. I want to hit some other numbers to have some investments and to be able to I put over 1/3 of my money aside. We put a very large percentage into charity. We're celebrating our 10-year wedding anniversary. We're going to Ireland. I have a lot of different things going on. There were some different crypto plays and some different investments. I drove Instacart. Why? I'm out meeting people anyway. I had some time during the day. My kids were at a private Montessori school. I had a great time doing it. I met a lot of people. I had a lot of contacts. Some of those people end up being business contacts. Anytime anybody puts down somebody for doing something and treats anyone less than, particularly when you think something is below you, there is nothing more sad than allowing your pride and ego and entitlement cause your family and future family to stay broke and not have the opportunities.
Yeah, no, that's power. That's well said. And I think it's a message that people often need to hear because millennials like to compare themselves too much to what other people are doing. What are some common kind of mistakes that you see people repeatedly make? We touched upon that a little bit before. I mean, besides just outspending your your revenue.
Yeah. Car payments are huge, which goes in that category. It's keeping up with the Joneses and buying things you don't need. Another good example of this, because I always find this comical. We went to a thrift store because I buy all my kids' stuff at the thrift store. The stuff's brand new. They grow out of it in 3 months.
Right.
We get all sorts of name brand. Why? It's not about, it's stewardship. It's not about being able to. For me, it's about stewardship. So it's like, yes, we can go spend $1,000, no problem, and just buy them stuff. We have that choice, and we're blessed and thankful for that. But I'd rather, if I can get the stuff for $1,000 and I can get it for $50, and I can take the $950 and either invest it or give it away to charity for someone that doesn't, that means I can help 10 other families be able to buy this stuff, or I can invest it in my future family's wealth. So it's really more a mindset. I was on the line at a thrift store though. Guy in front of me, he was buying like 10 pairs of jeans. That started a conversation. I said, "What do you do?" He does floors. I said, "How's business?" He goes, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." I said, "Shoot, my business is going pretty good too." He goes, I'm profiting $50,000 to $100,000 a month. He goes, "I just can't bring myself to waste the money on these pants that get wasted every week." So you got a guy with a multi-million-dollar company, 2 people in a row at the thrift store, but because you are a vice president with a status title, you're concerned about what other people are going to think about you, and you need to go spend triple. You need to go buy a Hermès belt. My wife always makes fun of me when I'm saying it right, or Ferragamo pair of shoes to impress whom? Where are you putting your value in? So that's a big one, which you had mentioned. Another one is having a low self-image and not asking for raises. One of the things that I find causes a wealth disparity, particularly with women in the workplace, is that they're just less likely to demand and ask for a raise. Here's what everyone needs to do. You should always be giving more and doing more than your job's paying you for. Whatever you put your hand to, you do with all your effort, and you do your best. You do the best at it. And then you prove you do jobs that other people aren't doing. Look around for a bunch of gaps in your company. Do that stuff. And then 2 or 3 months later, go to the manager and said, I'm doing this, this, and this that was broken. It's creating about this much revenue. I want this much of a raise. And there's only two scenarios. Either they give it to you, or then you go and you find another job offer, and you're willing to go out there, and then you get a job offer for $20, $30, $50, $100,000 more, and then you tell your job, I'd love to stay here if you do, but this is the amount of money I need to make. I have a guy I work with that has negotiated close to $100,000 of raises with only one title change over the course of 3.5 years because of the value he brings in doing that. But there comes a time. I have a guy I'm currently coaching and mentoring. He works in Unilever. He's a food scientist. He's making $80,000. He should be making $120,000. He moved to Missouri for a year to run their plant from New Jersey. He moved there. Won't give him a raise. He's got an offer on the table for $120,000 in the city. Eventually what happens is if your job refuses to give you more money, you must change. And those who are willing to change and not be afraid and count on themselves typically are always going to earn more money over time because that company needs to fill a spot. And if they think that they can take advantage of you, I don't care how good these people are, business, their goal is to pay the least amount they can. They have numbers that they need to hit.
Right.
So low self-image and not asking for more. It's another big trap people fall into. People not getting clear what their hobbies and their work-life balance needs to be. Here's my opinion. I believe you should love your life. But if you let your softball league, if you think your softball league and playing softball is more important than your family's financial future, I think you got your priorities out of alignment. So if you want to be able to put yourself in a position, save money, work hard, put money aside, get out of debt, drive a shitty car that other people don't like and you don't feel great driving for a while, put that money aside and put yourself in a position to buy both your time and then ultimately those other items. This way you can have those choices in the future. So there's a few things I think that might be helpful potentially to the audience here.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. So, okay, let's go a little deeper on that. So, or continue with that. So, let's say you're out of debt. You've got some liquidity. You have some disposable income, and you want to start investing, or maybe you've already done a little bit of investing or dabbling in. What do you recommend? I mean, I see a lot of people, there's a lot of talk about cryptocurrency, NFTs, right? It's new, it's sexy. It's also super risky. People want to get rich quick, but investing is meant to be a long-term goal. And so I think patience kind of died with millennials and social media. Some people want to get into real estate. What do you think? What do you recommend for people who want to start getting a little bit more serious about investing or start to dabble in investing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, I'm not a financial advisor. I'll give you some things I've learned from people that have my fiduciary. Now, I don't manage my own money. I have a fiduciary. He was formerly the #1 trader on the entire platform. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say the name. He started his own fiduciary firm. So first off, don't try to do something when you have experts doing it much better. You are much better off paying somebody a small percentage when it's done properly. Now, there's been a broker and a fiduciary. Really good book to read about this is by Peter Mallouk. What was Peter Mallouk's book's name? Unshakable is the one that Peter Mallouk wrote with Tony Robbins. I don't know. Maybe we can look it up for the notes here. I forget what it's called. By Peter Mallouk. It's about creative planning. Excellent book to read on some of those different principles. But I don't think it makes sense for us to try to compete with experts and computer algorithms as an individual, personally. So if you're taking money, I think some base things. You should always be maxing out your Roth IRA. Makes no sense not to. If you're below the income levels to be able to do that, if you are above the income, then you need to find out from a financial advisor what a backdoor Roth IRA is. They may recommend you do a SEP IRA, but it's unlikely. But you want to make sure you're maxing that out. If you have a 401k at your job and they match, you should always put at least as much as they match because it's free money. No matter how many fees they charge you, you're going to always have a better return in doing that. Investments, here's for me. ETFs, they're called index funds. It's a cross-section of the stock market. They have virtually no fees. It's an easy way to do it, to start doing things. Having a strategy. Let me give you some clarity. My business partner, Tony, He recently spoke on Richard Branson's Private Island a year and a half ago about impact giving. He has some friends with companies that are worth close to $1 billion that he does some work with. They have an angel fund. He works a lot with a fund, with Aaron Rodgers and some different people that are very, very wealthy. So here's how angel investors work. Most people are trying to pretend like they're an angel investor, which you picking a crypto coin and doing those different things is very similar. Here's angel investors. They invest in 100 deals, knowing that they lose probably on 97 of the deals. Right. They maybe make money on 2 or 3, and they have 1 unicorn. Do you have the money to be able to invest in 100 deals to find the one winner? Because the reality is most people don't. Right. So there's something called the amount of allocation in your investments. You need to have a certain percentage that's safe, a certain percentage that's risky. But as a strategy to try to hit a home run and to gamble, it's gambling.
Right. It is gambling. And this goes back to, diversity in a portfolio, right? I mean, owning a few individual stocks is not being diverse. And you mentioned index funds, which are great. Just personally, I understand you're not a fiduciary. Well, first off, what's the difference between a fiduciary and a broker? You kind of referenced that.
Yeah, that's a really important question. A fiduciary gets paid on the amount of money being managed. Therefore, the more money is being managed, the more money they make. They make money with you winning. A broker makes money by you doing a transaction. Whether you buy something or sell something, they get a percentage. And they have varying levels of profitability depending on the product they sell you. Here's the challenge with human behavior. When you incentivize financially bad human behavior, you get bad human behavior. So a broker, no matter how good of a person they are, they have a list of things that they make a lot more money from you doing. Does not mean they're beneficial to you. That's a very dangerous place to be. Then a fiduciary, they only make money based on you making a lot of money. That's why it's important. Get that book by Peter Mallouk. Also, in the regulatory space, they particularly make this opaque and complicated so people don't understand. Because not only can you be a broker, you also can be a fiduciary at the same time. And you cannot tell people that I'm talking as a broker, I'm going to talk as a fiduciary, and then all of a sudden I put my broker hat on. And they don't have to advise you that they're no longer fiduciarily helping you. Mm. So finding someone, now the challenge of finding a fiduciary, you typically need a large sum of money to start with them because they're making a percentage.
Right.
So creative planning, and there's some different industries out there that have lowered that number to be able to get access to people. But that's why it's a good idea to read that and to kind of seek some of those things out. I know we have a personal relationship with some of these different organizations. None of the ones I'm mentioning, you're not allowed to say what organizations you have relationships with. That's not how it goes. But I can recommend a book. And for me, that book by Peter Mallouk is an excellent starting point to learn about some of this stuff.
For sure. We talked about index funds. What should people look for? What's your strategy? I'm just curious about that.
I let my fiduciary handle it. And he has everything stateside. He said that emerging markets aren't really the best place to be. And he's the guy that has the knowledge on it. I think the best advice I can give everyone listening here is to say, put your money aside. Now, if you put it cash in a bank account, unless you're trying to buy a house or something, we had a 42-year high month-over-month inflation rate. What that means is the rate of your income, the amount of money that your money is worth, is degrading at an aggressively accelerating pace. Money left in a bank account is basically disappearing. So you have to put it in assets. You have to put it somewhere. Open up a Vanguard account or a Fidelity or a TD Ameritrade and look at just basic S&P 500 index fund, ETFs they call them now, and just invest in the entire market. It's going to go up, it's going to go down, but if you draw lines from the 1920s to now, it has always gone up on a 5-year basis.
Right.
Put your money there until you can get enough money to have someone professionally advise you. Now, in real estate, unless you're a contractor and unless you're going to do different things, people like to talk about things. They like to be like, they think it's cool sounding. If you haven't invested in a real estate deal, be prepared to mess up and lose a bunch of money and have a tenant not pay you or have the roof leak or a foundation issue with termites. I mean, there's lots of things that need to go into these things to consider it. Not saying real estate's bad. It's wonderful. Just understand what you're going into and understand there's going to be a learning curve.
Right. People often invest, people invest, for example, NFTs, crypto is a perfect example. They have no idea like what the return is on that. They don't understand the risk. They just think that it's like flipping a house or like flipping a car, like trading cards, and don't really fully understand what they're risking. Someone asked me, I would feel bad if we didn't touch on it just briefly. Credit score. I see same common mistakes being made. People don't understand credit utilization ratio, and that to improve credit score, you need to maintain a balance, typically under like 45%, I believe, of your total available balance. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add here.
Yeah, so I don't have, again, I'm not a credit repair specialist, but I've had terrible credit, and we work with some people that are credit repair specialists. What we've really built is a mentorship program that we have, people that are excellent in different areas to advise. But credit has a few factors. Longevity is a huge one. The average age of your accounts, which proves how you've managed yourself.
Right, which is why closing an account may not necessarily be advisable.
You should almost never close an account. If you want to cut your card up, if you don't have the self-control, you want to put it in a safe, that's fine.
Right.
But don't close the account unless it's charging you a ton of money for a credit line. But like most people with platinum Amexes are not closing their credit line, because when you get to that point, you're typically not there. But you want to keep them open. I have a card, my oldest card, my first Capital One card, like $100 here. I haven't used the freaking card in forever, but the thing's got, it's 17 years now. I'm not gonna take it off my account.
Right. Just keep it at zero balance. Cut up the card. It doesn't even matter.
Leave it there. I just pay $100 every year. So longevity is important. Now, credit card utilization, the lower the percentage is actually better. Typically between 0 and 10%. Now, you need to use your stuff, and you can pay them in full, though. I don't use any credit card like a credit card. Any card I use is a charge card. I use it, and I pay it in full, statement balance within 30 days, which means you'll never incur any interest.
Right.
Now, that's enough. You can create credit in that way. That's fine. Secured loans are going to be highly weighted than unsecured loans. An unsecured loan is a credit card. A secured loan is a home or a car. You shouldn't get a car payment just for the sake of building your credit. Don't fool yourself. But if you have certain tax write-offs as a business owner, it sometimes is advantageous, or at least close enough to be worth the convenience factor of it. But you talk to your accountant about that.
We had one question about home ownership, renting versus buying. Curious of your thoughts on that.
It's not a clean-cut answer because there's challenges that come with home ownership. If you're willing to be conservative, here's some rules. My mom's cousin, she was actually on my podcast. She's a very successful real estate saleswoman. She recently built an entire brokerage over the last 15 years. And they approached her, and she sold it to Gale Sotheby's with a huge exit. And she's very successful, tens of millions a year in real estate, probably close to 100 million at this point. She said, one of the things you want to do, you want to buy the worst house in the best area. Because if you build the house out, you can't move it. You never buy the best house in the worst area. You're not going to be able to appreciate value. Different areas have certain income that they're willing to pay. So if you can freaking make your house a mansion, you will cap out in certain areas based on the renovations that you do. I believe you should never buy a home without a rental income. And that rental income should at least be covering your taxes and a chunk of your mortgage. I think that's vitally important. I think it's important to do that. Now, people are like, well, I don't know if I want to have that, and that limits my options. It certainly does. I'm not in my dream house. But the cost of living that my wife and I have been able to live with, while we then had a benefit of the market timing of our home going up tremendously in equity, just because of the nature of things, allows us to basically live virtually for free over time.
Just to clarify, when you say rental income, you mean to rent out your house or have separate source of income?
An apartment. You should have an apartment. If you're going to buy a house, make sure you have a rental income in the house.
Oh, I see. Like
way,
subdividing, you mean, or like creating like a multi-family type?
Whether it be a basement apartment, it be a mother-daughter, it be whatever.
Some part of the house that you can rent out.
Because keep in mind, I mean, Pete knows, in New York and in California, taxes are insane. So my yearly tax bill to own my home Doesn't go anywhere. It's not building the equity. So if you have a rental income that's at least going to pay for your taxes, now you're paying interest and principal, as long as you don't have to pay PMI, which is if you don't put a 20% or greater payment down. So that means my interest I can at least write off of my taxes, and I'm paying off principal. So at least I'm gaining in equity and money. Now, if that rental income is greater, now you could have a rental income that's paying a chunk of the interest on the loan and the taxes, and you're just paying it principal. Now you're just winning in that case, outside of the repairs and different things. But you might not want to stay somewhere. There's a few things I think that really hurt people financially. If you keep jumping industries, you got to start over. It's not bad, but it's going to hurt you from creating wealth. The longer you stay in industry, the more professional and the higher income you're going to create in it. Secondly, that if you're changing spouses, you're going to keep losing large sums of money. And third, if you're going to keep moving, every time you move, it incurs a lot of expenses. And you're not going to get upset. You're not going to get right side up in a mortgage if you're paying off a traditional amount in 3 or 5 years. You're just going to keep paying interest. So you got to understand the amortization tables. You got to understand the math around it if you're going to do it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Well, what are some or Lily, do you have any? I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you had any questions for Anthony. I think you're on mute. If you want to, if you have anything.
So my question is like for someone who doesn't have any investment and then really want to start like to invest something like small, what would be like the best or the less risky one?
Yeah, that's a great question.
But just I think Lily's outside the United States, so that's also just a key.
Philippines, right? She's in the Philippines, if I remember correctly from last time.
Or Bali?
Right? Where are you located, Lily? Is my memory serving me accurately, or am I wrong?
I think the connection is like it's really bad. I didn't hear what you say before.
We were just asking where are you located, Lily?
Oh, where am I right now? Oh, I'm in Bali. I'm still in
Bali. You gotta pee. You know your members. So, regardless where you are in the world, I think that Dave Ramsey's baby steps and the way that you put money aside is a really good, healthy, conservative way as a model for you to start. So first off, you want to get to $1,000 saved. So you have an emergency fund. It's going to give you a peace of mind, make you feel differently. Secondly, you want to make sure that you get your debts paid off from the lowest balance to the highest balance. Some people do interest rate, whatever. So if you're debt free and you have $1,000 now, number 3, you want to get 3 to 6 months of expenses. So if you lose your full-time job, especially if you're an active income earner, that you have that covered. Then you can start working and going through and start going to the point where if at step 4, you're paying off a mortgage. And if you own a home or buying a home, then you want to start moving towards saving for college for your kids. If you have kids and that's something that you want to do. And then if you want to start investing at that point, now you got a really solid foundation to come from. And you're really able to start massively increasing your wealth, putting money towards retirement. I don't know every country has different laws around retirement type accounts. I find out what that looks like in Bali. There's probably some advantageous things. I'd Google it. I'd ask some wealthy people. I'd ask them for some advice. And then I would really start to try to seek what that looks like. But if you start getting money aside, you can at least start to make some calls. What I wouldn't do, like Pete said, is just pick something that's trending and just throw money at it because you heard about it. You don't understand it. You should make sure that you have some clear understanding and read some books. Put some money aside and put yourself in an educated position to make a choice to understand what that looks like for you. But to tell you exactly what to do, it's kind of out of bounds for me, especially with you being in Bali and me not being a financial advisor legally.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
For sure.
What, Anthony? What are kind of your top two or three takeaways that you just want people to know regarding financial literacy?
You need to make more than you spend. You need to build an asset so you can buy your time back. You'll never be financially free with active income. I don't care how professional or how much money you're making in your job. It's a foundation, it's a starting point. It's a wonderful blessing to start from. It's a terrible destination. And number three, if you really put compound interest on your side, you can leave legacy wealth to your kids and your family. One of my goals is to have irrevocable trusts, where depending on inflation, so it's a few $1,000,000, where each of my kids and then each of my grandkids have a certain amount of basic income that comes in just from the interest from these irrevocable trusts. Not enough to spoil them. It's enough to make the difference from them going out to do the thing that they really truly want to do that doesn't pay them enough to subsidize them to be able to do it, to have enough money to live their life. Never enough to survive.
Right.
But if they just want to survive, they can't ever touch the principal. Because you give $1,000,000 to somebody, you will wreck them. If you give a few $1,000s a month just to live on, that's not enough to hurt yourself. It's just enough to survive, but a foundation to be able to go out and do things. Start to learn the amount of impact that you can make. Because anyone that's hearing me that's in their 20s, particularly in your early 20s, if you're lucky enough to hear that, and you maximize your investments, you'll have an 8-figure net worth minimum. If you really put the money aside, you focus on these principles. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, as per one of the smartest guys ever, Einstein. You know, get a compound interest calculator, download it on your phone and play with the numbers and look at what can happen to your money with an 8 or 10% annual year return for you just putting money aside for your future.
That's so, I can personally relate to that. I can attest that, Anthony, because, you know, I inherited some cash when my father passed away, and it wasn't it wasn't in an irrevocable trust, you know. And
yeah.
And then you deal with all the guilt, like the psychological guilt of, oh, I didn't have to work for this money, even though the irony of that is we all work hard because we want to leave a legacy for our kids, right? The same thing that we wish we had, and then we're like bashing people for it when we're all working for that same goal. It's such an oxymoron. It's so hypocrisy.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, totally. You know, and it's interesting, you know, because it's like certain people that you can hurt yourself if you don't have if you have resources, but you don't have the character development or the experience. You give a tool to somebody, you give a tool to a toddler, they hurt themselves. And money is a tool. It requires a certain character load, a certain understanding. So we're all trying to help people. That's why for me, at least this iteration of my life, I thought an irrevocable trust was a great thing, because we're looking to build life. We're looking to build, legacy and help our family and put them in a better position. But this way, it was a way that they can make it on their own, because I also think that helps too. At least I grew up so poor, Pete. You know, that's kind of the life I know. So it's almost like you don't want people to grow up that way, but it's like, I don't know if that adds or takes away. But either way, money's just a tool. And if it's used properly, it allows you to put yourself in that position. But it is funny that you say that, because that is why we work, is to be able to make a difference and to do those different things, you know?
Right. Yet somehow as a society, we shame people who, inherited money, when the truth is we're all working to do the same thing. We all want to leave a legacy for our children, make an impact, and then we turn around and bash other people for it. It makes no sense.
Anyone bashing anyone else and criticizing someone else has no idea what they're actually saying. There's no monuments to critics. And anyone that bashes anyone else, what they're doing, how do you have time for that? I mean, if you're just going to minimize other people's enterprises and their lives, I mean, how short-sighted, foolish, and self-centered is that? Plus, a guy like you, Peter Dara, I mean, sometimes people can invest money. Like, if I inherited money, I might have been a drug addict. I mean, I was a mess when I was younger. So it depends on the person. But look at what you've done. You're building a company. You're building a community to make a difference for people. You're, been able to travel and do different things in your life. You're seeking to help other people. I mean, what a blessing and what an amazing testament to who you are and your family.
Well, I appreciate that. It's what you do with the cards that you've been given, right? It's what you do with it that matters. Not how you got it or what your situation is. It's what are you doing in service of others with what you've been given and what talents you have and abilities you have.
Absolutely. I'm a Peter Darrow fan. So is my wife. Every time your audio comes through, she goes, "That guy's such a nice guy."
Oh, that's sweet. Well, we're gonna leave it on that. We're gonna leave on a high note there. But that's very sweet of you, Anthony. And again, thank you so much for all your advice and guidance and help. Lily, thanks for also listening and asking.
You're welcome. By the way, I'm going to add in a little bit. I think I agree with Anthony. Well, in regard of your story that you blew up your father's money, and then I think I heard that you had this restaurant business that was unsuccessful. So, but I think at least you made something. You know, you tried, even though if that wasn't successful, but you make something. You try business, right? Or I think maybe you should try again in the future.
Well,
I don't know.
I always tell people there's no shame or embarrassment in trying something. I think Anthony
exactly.
Well, you know, and that's just a millennial thing that sometimes people get too caught up in image and self-image.
True.
Yeah,
it's true. Well, I'm glad to share with you guys. I love Wise Millennial. Anything I could ever do to help anyone in this community, Lily, and anyone else that hears this later on, I am so happy to. And anything we can do for you, Peter, we're always happy to and thankful to know you and be friends with you and connect with you, be part of this community.
Well, thank you, Anthony. Like I said, we're lucky and honored just to have you part of it as well. So, you know, like I said, thank you so much. And we'll make this available. We'll put this on the platform, and so people can watch the replay as well. And I'll share the notes as well, some of those resources that you provided.
Awesome. And if anyone wants any clarity, you can always reach out.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anton.
I really appreciate it. Have a good night. I'm glad we got the audio all figured out. Thanks.
Yes, finally. Hopefully it works out. Yeah. Otherwise we'll have to do it again.
No, we got it. It's all good.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. All right, guys. Have an awesome night. Bye, Pete. I'll catch you tomorrow. Give me a call.
Sounds good. Thanks, Anthony.
Bye, Lily.
Bye.
Bye, Anthony. Bye, Peter.